I cannot remember what the first piece was. It might have been the Fifth Symphony. My conducting teacher, Jorma Panla, was the first Finnish conductor who actually conducted a Mahler cycle, all the Mahler symphonies in Finland, and this was in the 70s. I remember the feeling, however, I was a little bewildered. I was very familiar with Bruckner at the time, and I was very taken by the sort of simplicity and clarity of the form in Bruckner, and the kind of a lack of evolution in a way, just presenting the material, a bit like Japanese cuisine. You know? This is the raw material, and that's your meal. Whereas Mahler, of course, especially in later Mahler, the material is in a state of constant flux, and there's a sort of constant variation going on, and there's sometimes cyclical variation, so variations upon variations in a way. So the first impression was a little bewildering. The first Mahler symphony I ever conducted was number 3, and that was in 1983, and I was 25 at the time. And I stepped in for Michael Tilson Thomas with the Philharmonia in London on a very short notice, and I had to learn the symphony very quickly, and I went and did it. And that basically launched my conducting career. I think the more I conduct Mahler and the older I get, things get more simple, and I'm trying to. I mean, I do less basically, and I don't invent very much rubato in this music anymore. I try to make it sound organic, which is sometimes a problem in Mahler because it is not always organically put together. But when it sounds simple, natural, organic, and not sort of twisted or artificial, then I think it works for me. And I'm not. I'm fascinated by the richness of that music, and I'm fascinated by the wide scope of material, and I'm fascinated by the sudden twists and turns of the mood and the expression and all that. But I'm not particularly. I'm not looking for the neurotic quality in that music. I mean, because it is there absolutely, but I don't think it needs. It's not the point for me. I think this is music that works on so many different levels, and it's very uneven also. At some moments, the worst moments in Mahler symphony are really truly terrible, I think, and the best moments are unbelievable. Well, in the first movement of the Third Symphony, for instance, there's this sort of C major phrase in the middle of the march that sounds like the American Navy, arriving at, I don't know, one of the naval bases. There are some unbelievably banal and kind of painfully banal moments. Some of the first Nachtmusik in number 7 is also kind of, sometimes it's hard to believe that he put that in. I think for Mahler, the struggle was personal. I think for him, he was displaced always wherever he was. He was displaced in a way, and kind of homeless in a way. And the irony of the Sixth Symphony, of course, is that it was composed exactly during the happiest time of his life. He had started at the Staatsoper in Wien. It was all going very well. He was very successful. He had the most prominent conducting position in all of Europe, all of the world, of course. He was married to this young, radiant, beautiful, smart woman, and he had 2 lovely children. And this, you would think that this is the sort of moment to write the apotheosis of love and sunshine somehow, but no. I think it's the sudden shifts and jumps between different moods and expressions. I think that's a sort of typically neurotic behavior. And also, from the Sixth Symphony onwards, that quite often the thematic material is very sort of elusive. The themes are kind of complicated. If you think of the March theme in the finale, for instance, of the Mahler 6, it's really complicated and kind of jumpy and nervous, but I think it's more the kind of moving from one expression to another, sometimes without transition time, just like flipping over. And I think that's typical of neurotic behavior. The idea of trying to write foolproof music and trying to notate everything so precisely and clearly that not even an idiot can destroy it. I think in this he was one of the pioneers, of course. I mean, even people like Brahms and they kind of, if you look at the Brahms score, there's not a lot of information there. I mean, there's all this music, but he's very kind of he uses all these markings very sparingly, and then if he writes something, it really stands out because then you know that it's important. But he was still able or willing to trust the instinct of the musicians of his time. But I think Mahler's experience was such that people just didn't get it, and people made lots of wrong decisions and treated his music in a way that wasn't what he had intended. So he ended up notating everything incredibly. There's this kind of summary, kind of end of life, creative life feel. Of course, it's funny to think that late Mahler is somebody my age, and I don't feel particularly late at this point, but so it's fun. It's strange to think in those terms, but I'm just terribly moved by Mahler 9 always. But also I discovered lots of new things in Mahler 6 recently when I conducted it a few times, and so it's music that you never get tired of because there's so much there. When I perform that music, I'm not thinking I'm Mahler. I don't have to kind of identify with the composer. That's not my position. I'm trying to perform it on as high a level as possible and really with maximum intensity and power and all that, but I don't think I'm Mahler. I mean, I don't have this kind of identification. Well, I don't think anybody knows why he didn't write an opera. He might have had a Wagner complex somewhere. It might have been that as he knew Wagner operas intimately and he conducted most of them, and it might have been he might have put the bar too high for him. I'm not sure, but that's the only explanation I can imagine, because he was a very literary person, and he of course was the leading opera conductor of his time, and so why not, indeed. And the closest thing to opera he ever came is at the end and in the beginning of his career. Das Klagenlied, of course, is a story being told, but of course what doesn't make it operatic is the fact that the singers don't represent one character, but they kind of jump in and out of character, and then sometimes they are the voice of the person, sometimes they are singing from outside, describing what's happening, and so this makes it very difficult to see this work as a sort of proto opera. But the second part of the Eighth Symphony, of course, is the closest thing he ever came to opera, in the sense that every singer represents a person and a part in a play. And of course, it's a very tempting idea to stage Mahler, where you could really have the holy boys flying across the stage, and Dr. Marianus would be kind of bathing in this golden light, and Chorus Mysticus would finally raise to the heavens at the end. I think the simple answer is he wanted to share something with other people, and in this he was very powerful.